Welcome back to this full Excel eSports course. We're currently in the game cases chapter. We've been through card games, dice and board games, and we're going to talk about some of the other concepts that you'll encounter now. There's more to come, so subscribe if you want to see that. So the other concepts I want to talk about today, which haven't already been covered, is model layout, switching things on and off in a game, and introducing additional players. Because these are things that come up all the time in kind of game cases. And to explain some of those points, I've made a pretend game up in my head in the last 2 minutes, which is going to be a dice game where we have 100 random dice thrown. And let's say that the goal is to add up all the points that you get from throwing these dice, but they're going to have certain effects. So if you roll a 1, your turn will be over and it will be the next player's turn. If you roll a 6, all of your next throws will be doubled in value until you roll a 2, which will turn off that doubling of value. So these are essentially your switches, one on and one off, and one ends your turn so the next player comes along. Now firstly, model layout. With game models, a lot of the time one turn will be dependent on what happened in the last turn. So that's true here. If we turned on the 2 times, then the score is dependent on what happened in the last turn and so on and so on. And because the model builds upon itself, it's best practice to try and lay everything out. So I would start here by saying base score, for example, regardless of whether they're the points I'm actually going to get. And I'd just say Unicode of this minus 9855. We went through that in the dice video of how to get dice values out. And a case will normally build up by starting with only one player. So let's say player 1. And again, I kind of want to spill out as many columns as I can in as much detail as I can. Let's just center everything as well to make it a little bit easier to read. And then let's put total score. For this, I normally take the first score and then I just do that plus the next number, and I can drag that down, and the bottom number will give me the score over 100 dice. A second or third question in the case will often introduce some of the rules about things you hit. So let's introduce the rule that we start getting double the score if we roll a 6 and it turns off if we roll a 2. So for that switch, we want to make a new column. So for that column, we'll call it double. And this is where it can get a little bit tricky. So I essentially want to spill in this column. I could use a flag, so 1 if it's on and 0 if it's off. Or I could use a 2 and a 1 to do a multiplier, so I can then use that to just multiply by the base score. So these effects normally apply from the next turn onwards. So at first I'm going to say it's off with a 0. So if it's on, I can say equals this equals a 6. So that would turn it on, and I'll lock that. Let's do a minus minus and put it in brackets to turn it into 1s and 0s. So I haven't had a 6 for ages, so I'm just going to randomize all my dice rolls again. Okay, so we have our double flag to say where we rolled a 6 on the last turn, but we can already see the trickiness of this. So the first trickiness is that I need the number to stay on. I need this 1 to stay on until I hit a 2. So if you're not very experienced in this, you can get into a real mess trying to kind of continue to keep the 1 there until you hit a 2. You might do something like try and carry on the number from here into this cell, plus what you had there, and then you'll see that we sort of we get a flag when it's on, but now we need to turn it off, and these numbers go above 1, so that's not very clean, and it's quite hard to find a clean way to do this. So the easiest way I found to think about this is to do an if condition if it's on, and an if condition if it's off. So if it's on, it means the number above would be a 1. So we could say if this is on, i.e. that's a 1, then what turns it off? So our new number would be that minus this equals the 2, so that turns it off, and we'll put that in brackets there. Then we want to do our off condition, so we're not in the on condition, we're in the off condition, so that means that number would be 0, so then it's that plus this equals the 6, so that would turn it on. And now if I drag that down, what you'll see is the 6 stays on, so I hit it here. So it stays on all the way up until I hit a 2. So with this method, I don't end up double counting 6s or getting into a mess with things that aren't 1s and 0s. And that's kind of the nicest, cleanest way I've found to do it. So it's essentially, if it's on, give me that value minus the off switch. And if it's off, give me that value plus the on switch. So hopefully that makes sense. And now we can have a new column, say adjusted score. And that's going to be base score times if this, then 2, otherwise 1. So we now see that all of our numbers are doubled unless the switch is off. Now if you had multiple things with multiple switches that affected the score, I would lay them out in individual columns because it really does sort of pay dividends to have things laid out in detail with these type of game cases. So now our total score, I can just move the column across to here, and that would be how we do that kind of question. That's switching things on and off. Now let's talk about introducing other players. So there's really 2 scenarios with this. The first is that the player turns are not impacted by what happens between the players. So what do I mean by that? I mean player 1 goes, then player 2 goes, then player 1 goes, then player 2 goes always. So you have two options there. You can either make two tables, one for player 1 and copy it for player 2, or you can still do it in one table. So if we have 1, 2, 1, 2, and so on. Now the thing I don't like about having two models split out for player 1 and 2 is the following. Firstly, when you copy your table for a second time, often formulas will move around where things aren't locked and you have to kind of readjust them all a second time around. Next, if the player numbers don't always alternate, you kind of can't do it like that because you have to look from one table into the other and vice versa, and it just gets a real mess. And thirdly, if you just always do it in one table, then your method is consistent and over time you will build up good habits and just get better in general. So let's assume you're going to go with always in one table. So the first challenge is listing out which player it is. So let's assume it just alternates 1 and 2. So there's a couple of ways to do that. You can say, if this is 1, give me 2, otherwise give me 1. So that's the first way, and then it will alternate. Alternatively, if you needed to do this dynamically, so if you had a model that changed how many rows it has, you could say equals sequence of rows of this, for example. That's going to give us, you know, a list of 100 numbers. And then you could do something like mod of that plus 1, but do it mod 2. And then you could plus 1 again on the outside and you'll get your 1, 2, 1. I mean, that's not very clean. An easier way that I quite like, that I've seen in, I think, Eric Ashton's videos, is to just make a table of your players and flip it around. You can then just start with the first player, and then you can XLOOKUP that player on this and give this. And what that will do is it will just alternate down between 1 and 2. And that's quite familiar because we use XLOOKUP so often, so that's the reason I like this approach. The second reason I like this approach is if the game then introduces a third player, like this, you could have player 1 moves to player 2 moves to player 3, and player 3 moves back to player 1. And now, when you do your lookup, you can do something like this, and we will get 1 to 3 repeated. We can also incorporate this kind of logic into a model where the player turns are not consistent. So let's now introduce this end turn mechanic. We can keep 3 players, doesn't really matter. But let's say end turn, and we want a flag for where that happens again. So the flag is that equals the 1. So that's our end turn. And we will put it in minus minus again to turn it from 1s and 0s. So now our player number is going to be 1, and then we can just say if this, so if the turn is ended, then we need the next player. So we could, you know, if it was 1 or 2 players, we could just do the whole if 1 then 2, if 2 then 1 thing, or we can just use our XLOOKUP, whatever it was before, in here, and give us there. And then if the turn hasn't ended, it's just the player we had before. So now we see player 1 continues until they hit this 1, player 2 continues until they hit a 1, which is here, and so on and so on. And now we have a new problem. So the total score now, this adjusted score is still right because it's done on an individual turn basis, but the total score is quite hard to pull out for a player. So an easy way to deal with that is to say group by the player with the adjusted score, because this is individual turns, sum -2, that will list it top to bottom. So we have player 2 got that many points, player 3 got that many points, player 1 got that many points. Now that's fine unless there's another condition where the game ends at a certain turn. And if that was the case, you would want to do something like game end, just to get a flag. Do whatever if conditions make your game end, and then you could do the group by only up to that row, for example. Alternatively, you could build it into this total score column, however it gets a little bit messy. So what's the trick to do it cleanly? Well, if we come back to one of the first tips, it's model layout. So just you could do P1, P2, P3. Again, I'm trying to emphasize how important it is to split everything out into individual columns in a game case. So do something like that. Here's the total score to begin with. So I could now say if this player, and lock it to the column, equals 1, then give me this, otherwise give me 0 plus what was above. And I could pull that across, change this to player 2. I should really have made that dynamic by going 1, 2, 3. So I might just change that to be linked to here. And that would need to be locked to the row. And so would this need to be locked to the column. So let's just fix that. So now what you'll see is we can actually just get the score for all the players quite nicely without much effort. And then wherever the game stops, it's now quite easy to just pick out everybody's score, cumulative score, at that stopping point. So with this simple game, you can see how many columns there are, but it does make it really quite easy. So let's just touch on model layout for RPGs. So RPG stands for role-playing game. It's normally where you have a hero and a villain that fight against each other, and they have stats like attack power, defense, armor, HP, and so on and so on. And generally you'll have the hero against the villain, and each turn might be hero attacks villain, then villain attacks hero. And whatever order the stuff physically happens is the order I kind of list it out. So I normally always will list out a turn number, like so. And let's say the hero attacks first. So I'd have something like hero attack, hero defense, hero HP. So I'd kind of list my stats, and I'd do it in such a full spilled out way because again, they might change based on certain conditions, like they get a power up, which makes their attack power double. Then I'd do the same for villain. So I'd have villain attack, villain defense, villain HP. Let's do a sequence of 20 down here. Let's say his attack power was static at 10, his defense was 2, and the HP is going to be, let's say, 50. Now I like to go even further and put HP before here, and in villain's attack we can say 8, defense 3, HP 20. And again, that's going to be HP before. So I then like to play out the battle like so. So in turn 1, let's say hero attacks villain. So I'm going to do villain HP after, hero HP after. So the villain HP after is going to be their HP before minus the hero's attack plus normally the villain's defense. It could be something like that, it could be anything. You follow the rules of the case. So that's his HP after. And then I'll do the hero HP after. So I'll do something like the hero HP before minus the villain's attack, which is here, plus back the hero's defense, which was here. Then I can do a running model, a bit like I showed you with that kind of dice game. So the hero's HP before is now what his HP was after, and the villain's HP before is what it was after. So if I just spill these down for a second, we'll get some weird errors there. Let's make those are static values, and there we go. So that's kind of our model, but we'll run into some problems, and I'll explain how to solve those. So the first problem is that the health is never going to go below 0. So what you really want to do is say max of 0 and that stuff. So that caps it at 0. So if I pull that down, or I can pull it up as well, you'll see that their HP goes to 0 there. And you'd need to do that on both columns. So max of 0 and that. So that's the first adjustment you'd need to make. The second adjustment is that our villain would be dead in this case, but our hero's health is still going down. So what you can do is use the sine formula, if I spell it right, and if I do sine of something, if it's positive it will give me a 1, if it's 0 it will give me a 0, and if it's negative, so if I just put a negative 100 here, it will give me a -1. So it just tells me the sign. So the adjustment you can make is the health was here, you can adjust the attack, impact of the attack by the sine, so we can say times sine of the villain's HP. So when I do that, you'll see that my health stops dropping after the first turn because the villain only actually hit me once. That should actually be a minus, I think. So yeah, the villain only hit me once. So now my health stops dropping. And then you can add in a column for which villain you're fighting, and then as soon as the villain's health drops to 0, you can swap to the new villain like we did with this XLOOKUP on the player kind of method. So that's model layout, turns, switching things on and off, and these type of RPG things come up quite often. So it's very useful to know how to lay it out and what kind of things you might need to consider. So that's that. Next video we'll go through an example solve of a real game case. I've picked one that incorporates a lot of these concepts so we can go through them in a real situation, and in the next chapter will be all about maps, which is probably my favourite topic, so I've got some good stuff to share there. So hopefully I'll see you next time.